So we got news yesterday from Adrian Wojnarowski. ESPN sources, James Harden has returned to the Philadelphia's facility as the Sixers prepare for practice prior to today's flight to Milwaukee for opening night. Shams also added James Harden returned to Philadelphia on Tuesday night with his bags packed to join the team on the road for Thursday versus the Bucks and Saturday versus the Raptors, and the 76ers have now asked him not to travel with the team, sources said. Adrian Wojnarowski said, while Harden and the Sixers talked further following practice, plan remains as they discussed earlier today, sources tell ESPN. Instead of going on the opening road trip, the team directed Harden to report to the practice facility and work with development and medical staff to get ready to begin the season as soon as possible. It was also later came out at least for the foreseeable future, the Clippers are stepping back from these trade talks about Harden. ESPN Adrian Wojnarowski reported during Wednesday's NBA Countdown, they are essentially pausing them. They have talked with Philadelphia for months about a trade. They have made their best offer. So diving into all of this, first off, from the Clippers standpoint, right? You've had your conversations, you've had your back and forths. It does make sense from a Clippers standpoint to take a step back, right? Go into the season. They had their first game yesterday in which they won, right? And just kind of evaluate, see where are you, get through, 20 games or so, and then see what do you need. Chances are James Harden's probably not going anywhere with the Sixers. It would also give the Clippers an opportunity to see James Harden, right? Because the question is James Harden even ready to play this season? We have seen in the past James Harden show up to training camp out of shape, overweight, right? I mean, with Houston, it was so bad they thought he was wearing a fat suit, right? So if he's not ready to go and he's not ready to play, and you're the Clippers, why would you want to trade for this guy? Where now you can kind of, again, evaluate where you're at. Is James Harden a real need? There were the reports that came out that they were also in talks for Brogdon, but they prefer James Harden over Brogdon. And I mean, that makes sense, right? James Harden is probably going to cost you roughly the same. You might have to add in more salary, but as far as what you have to give up in a trade, the Blazers are going to want something probably similar than what you could get James Harden for, at least at this current state. And James Harden just presents more upside and a little more versatility on that end. But regardless, again, Clippers get to reevaluate and kind of see where they're at, and then they get to kind of keep an eye on James Harden and allow James Harden to kind of see, okay, where is he as far as basketball-wise goes? This is somebody that he is starting to get into shape. He is ready to go. He does look like the James Harden that led the league in assists last year. He does look like the James Harden that could come in and actually make a real impact. As far as James Harden goes, I mean, this might be the reason why James Harden returned, right? If you're James Harden, you got to show face, right? You got to show it. What are you going to do? You're not going to play this season. Also, he has to tread water, because if he doesn't, and he just tries to skip out on the season or anything, Philadelphia can essentially retain him even next season, right? So if he wants to leave the Sixers at some point, whether it's via trade this year or it's him leaving in free agency next season, he has to kind of take a step back and actually play some NBA basketball. And as far as him not returning and then the Sixers kind of telling him to take a step back, to me that's a bit concerning, because to me that tells me that James Harden doesn't look and seem like he is ready to step on the court, or at least the Sixers have concerns about him jumping right into an NBA game. It could just be kind of hey, you haven't practiced with us all offseason, right? And now we have our first game, so we got to kind of figure this whole thing out, right? We kind of want to allow you to kind of get your legs underneath you instead of you jumping right back in, and now you're just kind of, not purposely sabotaging us, but you are sabotaging us because you're not ready to play the game of basketball. Because again, there's no replicating actual NBA game and NBA play time and the pacing and everything, right? You can run in the Drew League. You can run at the YMCA. You could do, drills and run scrimmages and all that stuff. It's not the same thing as actually stepping on the NBA basketball court, right? And he is a veteran. He has experience. He knows what goes into it. But still, like, you want him to kind of get and build off the court to get ready to get on the court. So that's definitely a little concerning. Could this kind of be a ploy from the Sixers to kind of see, like, okay, what do they look like without James Harden, right? Because that's something, too, you got to keep in mind, right? Sixers with James Harden. If James Harden is bought in, he plays the way that we know he can play, the Sixers should be very good, right? I don't know if they'll come at... I still think Boston and Milwaukee are the two just head and shoulders above everyone else in the Eastern Conference, but there are teams that have, a puncher's chance or have an opportunity, and Philly is one of those teams, right? I mean, Philly, if James Harden, Joel Embiid show up, they might have been in the NBA Finals, right? Like, maybe they don't beat Miami, but I don't know. I personally think James Harden and Embiid showed up and they played to the way that we know that they could play. I actually think that they would have beaten Miami. That's neither here nor there. We'll never know because it didn't happen. But, if you're Philly, that's something you got to at least have in the back of your mind, where it's like, if we have James Harden, he's ready to go, we should be a contender. But how do we look without James Harden? How does this team look without Harden, to where, like, are we in trouble if we do end up trading James Harden to the Clippers? All right? Like, again, it's James Harden clearly wants out, right? And I don't see that changing. But if the Clippers have kind of reeled it back, then you kind of have that argument point towards James Harden, where it's like, look, dude, like, you're stuck with us, right? Like, if something comes along, you're stuck with us. But the best way for you to get traded, and maybe some team comes up and says, hey, you know what, we could use James Harden, is you playing the game of basketball. You playing to the highest level you possibly can. And like I don't know if James Harden is better with the Clippers than he is with the Sixers, personally. Like, I understand James Harden is, like, hurt and he feels scorned. He feels like Daryl Morey betrayed him or whatever, right? And I get that he wants to go to the Clippers, but I don't know how much better James Harden makes the Clippers, right? Like, it's going to be a little awkward. Like, is James Harden really going to be able to play third fiddle? Is he going to be able to kind of take that big of a step back, right? And Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, like, they like to get their shots up. And then you also have Russell Westbrook. It's just, I don't know, where at least on the Sixers, it's James Harden and it's Joel Embiid, right? Joel Embiid is the number one option, James Harden. But James Harden gets to kind of be himself. He gets to play the way he wants to play. Right? You have Tyrese Maxey and whatnot. That's like your three core guys. But, like, James Harden gets to go and just play the way that, however he wants to play. And the East isn't as grueling as the West is. Right? Like, you have, like, Boston and Milwaukee. And then the Sixers with the bought-in James Harden might be the third best team, like, clear-cut third best team in the East. Right? I know the Cavs make an argument, right? The Knicks can make an argument. Right? There are some teams that can make an argument, but I just think, we've seen James Harden and Joel Embiid, they're good enough to get there. And it's a tricky spot, right? Because Philly, for now, is stuck with James Harden, right? You don't really have any other options, right? You're stuck with James Harden, whether you like it or not. And so, at least James Harden showed up. At least he was ready to go, right? And he's willing to, like, step on the basketball court. But, like, this drama just doesn't feel like it's over, right? And James Harden, even if he plays, does he play to his full potential? I mean, it's his best interest to. Absolutely, it's his best interest to, and he should. But that doesn't mean he will, right? We've seen James Harden just completely be a no-show. And purposely just playing. I mean, again, Houston, he was out there, and it was worse than if he just wasn't out there. I mean, he was just doing the bare minimum. He was just basically showing up just to not get fined. And so if you're Philly, it's got to be a concern in the back of your mind. But I think that this is kind of the pause that everyone needs. James Harden's he kind of doesn't really have a choice, right? You got to go play for Philly. You got to lock in. You got to be focused. So hopefully he's putting in the work and doing what he needs to do. This gives Philly an opportunity to see what do they look like without James Harden. And then, the Clippers get to kind of evaluate and see where are they as far as in the standings go. Are they good enough, or do they need to go and get James Harden? That'll be interesting. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? Do you think James Harden ends up getting traded? Do you think he rides the year with Philly? However you feel, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video on your way out and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you. See you all in the next one.